So here's a chip on the Ferrari. As you can see, there's the main chip, what's gone really far down to the plastic. Then round the edge of that is where the lacquer's blown off. Just get a bit closer on that, can zoom in. So it's quite nasty really, probably needs a respray. We're going to see if we can tidy it up. So we're just going to get a blade first, and we're just going to try and tidy up any of the edges. Okay, so that's just tidied up where the lacquer had blown around the edge of the chip. It might have been painted before looking at it, so we've got a few layers to deal with. Just got a little bit of grey scotch, we're just going to key it up and rough it up around the area. There we go. Okay, so what's going to complicate this repair slightly is sometimes reds need an undercoat, which means they'll only cover properly a certain colour, and in this case it's white. So sometimes reds can be semi-translucent, so you can keep putting red over a dark grey, for example, and it will make the red look darker. Okay, so we're going to have to just try and touch this centre bit in, because obviously that you can see the grey plastic showing through. Most colours don't need an undercoat, but some do. Okay, so we're just going to let that settle. So we've let that dry, and now we're going to apply some of the red paint. So I've got some on a filler spreader. There we go. So you can either leave that for about half an hour, depending on temperatures, to flash off and dry off, or you can start drying it with a heat gun. Very gently. You don't want to force dry it too much. I actually prefer, if you haven't got heat lamps, infrared, then I prefer to actually let it dry, air dry. It's much better than trying to force dry it. But I'm just using this as an example. So I like to keep the area around the chip as tidy as possible, and not leaving us too much to sand off in the next stage. So one thing you can do is very carefully remove some of the excess paint around the edge with some acetone, gun wash or automotive thinners. Now we want to make sure we're not disturbing the centre of the chip where we've touched in, so we're just going to remove the excess around the edges. Okay, I think that'll do. Like I say, I don't want to disturb what we've already done in the chip area, so that's fine for now. Okay, I don't know if it picks it up on the camera, but what you'll find is once you've touched it in, even though it seemed level in the first place, once the solvents have evaporated, especially if it's been thinned down at all with reducer or thinners, you'll find that it sinks into the chip or the scratch. So we're going to have to layer it up maybe 2-3 times depending on how deep the chip is. This chip was really deep, so we're definitely going to need 2 or more layers. So exactly the same again, we're just going to put a bit of paint on the spreader and then we're just going to apply it exactly the same. If you can wipe off some of the excess while it's still wet, then that's going to help us. Obviously make sure you don't disturb the chip. Pretty happy with that. We don't want to be messing around with the paint too much, so we want to be getting the paint how we want it as quickly as possible. So as you can see, we've kind of filled the chip. We don't want to completely fill it, we want to be sort of filling it 80%, which once the solvent base coat's kind of sank back after it's dried, it'll probably leave you with that kind of range of fillage or whatever you want to call it, because we're going to put the clear lacquer over it now. So we're just going to do one more stage before the lacquer, but as you can see, it's kind of filled the chip as much as we need it to for this stage. Right then guys, so we're going to get some 1500 and we're just going to flat this off, preferably on a block or something flat. Bit of water, soapy water is even better. And we're just going to carefully sand off the excess. Now we have to be really careful at this stage, especially with this repair, because it's on a bit of a curvature. It's always important to check your progress at this point. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now we're going to be applying some clear lacquer over the top to protect it and make it a better repair. You can actually just leave it at this stage and buff it, perhaps not so much on this exact repair what we've done today, because we've not quite filled the chip, which we've done intentionally. So, but if you had and it was a less deep chip, then you can actually buff it at this stage, but that's entirely up to you. So this next stage is where we put the clear lacquer on, or clear coat, and this is a 2K lacquer. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of it to the squeegee. And then we're just going to do exactly the same as what we did before. So there we go, we've applied the clear coat lacquer, so we're just going to let that dry now. If you haven't got any heat lamps or infrared to dry it with, then I recommend leaving it probably overnight if you can. You really need that to cure properly before we can do anything with it. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that for a minute. So that's all been dried out now, so we're going to get some 1500 paper, wet and dry again, and we're just going to sand that nice and level, removing the excess at the same time. So I'm pretty happy with how the 1500's gone, so we're just going to use a bit of 2000. We'll do exactly the same thing. After the 2000, you can use 3000 on a normal bit of sandpaper. I've just got some of this Abralon stuff, same that kind of thing. We're just going to refine those scratches, make it easier to polish the surface back up. Okay, so we're going to polish this back up with some cutting paste. I like to use Freckler G360. You can get this from Paint Gear in these cool little 100-gram tubes. So we're just going to wipe off the excess polish. So there you go guys, we're just going to do a few finishing shots now. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment, help the channel out. You know, it's not a perfect repair, I can still slightly see it, but I'm sure you'll agree it's much better than what it was. You can still slightly see it if you're really looking, but I'm sure you'll agree it's a really good technique and the area looks 1,000 times better than what it did.